Right, hey, welcome back to the channel here. We're doing alligator snappers right now. So what we're gonna is I have these two tubs draining. So just pop the drain on them. You can see the water rushing out there. They're both Rubbermaids. This one is 150 gallons, and then this one is 300 gallons. These are great for raising up juvenile turtles of many different species, but I use these two primarily for alligator snapping turtles. And as we let the water drain out of this one, you can see there's one of our little guys nudging that log there. So he knows the water level's going down. There's the other one over there. And so there's two juveniles in here, two small little guys. And what I like to do in all of my alligator snapping turtle enclosures, as you're going to see here, is I incorporate a lot of sand. And I think that is extremely important, especially for juvenile alligator snapping turtles. They need a soft sand substrate, not gravel, not bare enclosure, not bare plastic or whatever it might be. They need a soft substrate, and I use paver sand that you can get at a big home improvement store, whatever. Paver sand is, and check the consistency of it before you commit to it. But the paver sand that I get is a very soft, fine grained sand that is great for their skin and their shell. And you can see that little guy. He is just completely burrowed in it as the water level has gone down. So he's just trying to, chase the water and hide himself there. But it does wonders for their shell, their skin condition. It is, just exactly what they need. If you keep alligator snapping turtles on gravel, it will erode their plastron. They will have a lot of trouble with wearing away the scutes on the plastron. It will actually expose the bone, so it'll wear away all the skin of the scute completely. You'll have exposed bone on those little guys. It opens them up to infection, and I mean, they're just in pain and discomfort all the time if you have them on a hard substrate like gravel. And yeah, in the wild, in some streams they inhabit, they may have a rocky bottom, they may have a gravel bottom, but that's in the wild, where they can also go to a muddy, softer area. The hatchlings are not hanging out on hard rock surfaces, so bear that in mind if you're keeping alligator snapping turtles. They need pretty specific habitat requirements, and when those requirements are met, they are really, really rewarding animals. They're super hardy. They're basically indestructible once those requirements are met. Let's take a closer look at this little guy, and we're gonna set him down here. So yeah, he's gonna move. They're very quick when they're this size. When they're small like this, and I don't want to turn loose of him with the camera in my hand here, because he'd be hard to chase down. And they could move, surprisingly fast on land when they're small. And he's pretty agile and pretty ticked off too. But you can see just that very rugged carapace there. And now you're snapping turtle in my hand, getting bitten by a sweat bee. Not fun. Yeah. But you can see that very rough carapace. That's what you want. That's what you want to see there. And really good condition. And I'm going to gently try and show you his plastron here. But you can see it's dark, right? That's a dark plastron. That is exactly what you want to see. That's good condition. It's not, you don't see any exposed bone, nothing like that. So, let's get him into this tub where the map turtles were. It's a sandy bottom as well. And, before we get in all up in arms about biosecurity and that kind of thing, all my guys are, most every animal I have is captive bred, and every single animal has gone through a lengthy quarantine, and I don't really, once they're part of the larger group, I don't really worry about, sharing enclosures and things like that. That's pretty negligible, right? So let's get the other guy out, and We'll take a look at him as well and get him in here. So you can house alligator snapping turtles together as long as they are of the same approximate size. You don't want you know, too big of a size discrepancy, and you know, as long as they have enough space, as long as they're not crowded. No matter what size they are, if they're crowded, you're going to have problems. So I'm going to start refilling this. Well, before I refill it, I should say, I'm going to run the hose a little bit through here and just sort of let the water drain out for a few minutes. It helps to just run the water through there. You know, we're not going to do a full dump everything out and you know, deep clean and that kind of thing. I don't ever do that with tubs that have sand in them like this. There's a certain element of biological filtration, you know, the biological community of what is essentially a small pond. Now, albeit this is very small, right? This is very contained, so it's not going to function exactly like an actual pond. But still, for this type of setup, I just don't want to, you know, completely change it, clean it all the way every time. Might do that, you know, once a year or so, and get new sand and things like that. But it doesn't really need to be completely changed out, you know, on a regular basis. And you don't want to do that. That would basically negate a lot of your natural systems that are happening in here. You have to aid those natural systems with occasional draining and refilling and things like that to get out the worst of the nitrates and ammonias and stuff like that. But, you know, I want to basically maintain the health of the enclosure, the sand itself, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to just kind of reposition this as we go to just essentially wash out the most of the detritus from the water itself. And, you know, we don't want to get rid of all of that duckweed either. That's starting to come in really nicely, so we're going to try and leave some of that. But we're going to let this water just percolate through and wash out some of the bad stuff. So while that's doing its thing, we have our other snapper here, and he's all nice and sunk in. Let's go, bud. Oh boy, look at that. He is just completely buried himself in there, and you can see that snout just sticking out. So he's a little flatter than the other guy, but you can see, you know, full tail, no deterioration of the tail. A lot of times these guys lose the tip of their tail, not to aggression from other snappers, but from too high of a pH. They start to get infections and things like that when the pH is too high, when it's not acidic enough. These guys love acidic water. They come from bayous. They come from you know, cypress swamps where there's a lot of tannins in the water, and they get, you know, a water that stays in a pH range of like 6 to 6.5 most of the time. And that actually kills a lot of bacteria. So they need that. And we're not going to bother this guy anymore by cleaning him off. It's kind of cool to see how he's burrowed in there. And we're just going to set him in here along with the other guy and let them kind of find their way in here. And there he goes. And that water will clear up once everything in the water column settles from me kind of disturbing everything. Let's go back over here. So that's pretty well drained where we want it. So we're going to put the cap back on and let that start filling. And we're going to grab our other guy. So here's the other alligator snapping turtle we're going to move around today. And he's going to go into that tub where those guys were. A little bit smaller than what he's used to, but this is going to be temporary. As I said, we're kind of playing musical chairs here as we move these guys around. And the two big juveniles that are in there are going to go in there once this has been expanded, as will a third big juvenile that is in yet another tank, a holding tank, and he's going to go in here. So we'll see him in a little bit. And I am going to put the camera down to grab this guy because I need two hands, even though he's not that big. Well, let's see if we can do it one-handed. see what happens. He's not that big, but he is pretty fierce. So you can see there, you know, he's pretty good sized. But let's get him over here and we can kind of see him a little bit better. Let's give him a little bit of a rinse off. Yeah, he's got some algae on him. His enclosure that he was in gets a little bit more sun than this one does, and that's one reason why I wanted to move him in here. I think being as small as he is, he's not too small, but I think he enjoys being a little bit more secluded, having a little bit more tree cover, and he's a really beautiful specimen. So he came to me as a rehome about a year and a half ago, and he was really well, I should say she. I believe this is a female, just based on the shell shape, and it's hard to tell at this age and this size, but she's got a very oval-shaped shell, and you know, a lot of people kind of swear by that for alligator snapping turtles, that the shell shape can really tell you the gender pretty early on in life. But let's just say she's a female. She came to me really pretty underweight and almost kind of weak looking. Had obviously been kept on gravel. She had that condition I was just talking about. Her plastron was just completely worn down to the bone, and it is regrowing now. So if I don't want to piss her off too much, but let's just take a quick look at that plastron and you can see what I'm talking about. So it is starting to regrow there, and it's looking really, really good. That was bone white when she came to me. But again, somebody kept her on gravel, not really understanding the biology of the species. Again, they may be on some gravels part of the time if they're in a stream environment in the wild, but they're not on that all the time, and they have the option to get off of it. If you keep them on gravel in captivity, they're gonna get messed up. They're gonna get hurt, and you know, it's gonna lead to a bad outcome for them. So use a fine-grained sand that they can really dig into, or you know, even mud, right? Like, I mean, in that pond, that is a mud bottom pond, and they love it. So that's the kind of thing that they need. So really cool little alligator snapping turtle. So, you know, slightly smaller enclosure, but still adequately sized. The most important thing for an alligator snapping turtle, for their habitat that you give them, is not necessarily the size, as long as they're not overcrowded, you know, and it's not a big bio load. It's not necessarily the size enclosure. It's, do they have sand, and do they have a lot of driftwood and tannins in the water? That's the big thing, right? You gotta have those tannic acids, gotta get your pH right, okay?